dear to the heart of Canadians, gasoline. Gasoline prices spiking across the country earlier this week, but they came down overnight in many places. But not all cities in the west, such as Vancouver, have been looking at increases. Montreal, of course, saw the huge price hike. Our guest is Roger McKnight, Senior Petroleum Analyst at Enpro International. Great to see you again, Roger.
Great to be here.
So you reckon that the spike we saw in gasoline this week had nothing to do with supply or refineries or demand?
We're not in Kansas anymore, Andy. Not in Kansas. When I look at price spikes like that, I look at the fundamentals of supply and demand. We look at the inventories in the U.S. The crude oil inventories are above the 5-year average. There's nowhere to put the stuff. Gasoline, it's the end of the driving season, so we're in the shoulder period of demand for both heating oil and gasoline, so that should be flat. As far as refinery problems are concerned, I haven't seen any note in Canada, but then again, the Canadian oil industry isn't required to report if something's wrong, how it's going to be fixed and when it's going to be fixed, so that's a bit annoying. There is some supply refinery situations in the Detroit-Chicago area, but that has nothing to do with a 6 cent a litre increase pretty well across the country.
So you reckon it's just good old greed? A single Canadian oil company hiked the prices and everybody else went along for the ride?
It's sort of kindergarten marketing as far as I'm concerned. The bully on the block said, we are the leader in this industry, in the gasoline market or the diesel market, whatever you want, and here's where we want the price to be. That's when it went up, 3.4. He said, send a message, that's where we want this price to be in this market, wherever it is across the country.
Because they're not allowed to phone each other up or send each other emails, so that's how you send price signals to competitors.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a big honking sign right out on the street.
And everybody else went along.
That's right. That's right. And then 2 days later, I guess effective today, the big bully said, okay, you've learned your lesson. Now we're going to go down. We're going down 6.2 cents a litre. And you know, I put a lot of credit into that to the media, because people like myself have been asked a lot of questions as to what's going on, and our answer is a shrug. And I think a lot of people got on TV, the consuming public, and said, we're sick of this, just give us a reason. Give us a reason. Because I'm not an oil company.
We've got a super high Canadian dollar.
Yeah, and that's buffering some of the increases that you should see at New York Harbor on the gasoline futures.
There's some of the prices. And just remind us why gas in Montreal is so expensive. I mean, top 150 a litre this week.
Okay, look at Montreal and Vancouver. Montreal and Vancouver are in a race. I call it the Olympics of tax structures, because they have the most confusing tax structures and intricate tax structures and biggest tax structures in the country. Vancouver and Montreal, you need to be a Philadelphia lawyer or a Quebec lawyer to figure it out.
Tell us what's going on right now. We're in demand season, shoulder. I mean, driving's over. Right. We haven't cranked up our heating yet, so generally fuel demand weaker at this time of year. Yeah, the distillate levels are getting a little bit concerning because they're below the 5-year average. The refinery runs are at about 84%, which is normal for this time of year because they're doing a conversion to accept paraffinic type of crude. The winter gas. Yeah, winter for heating oil is what we're talking about. So they're doing a conversion to take paraffinic crude oil, which gives a higher yield of distillates or heating oil. So that's okay, but my big concern, I guess, is not only the distillate situation, but the geopolitical situation as it's going to affect speculation in the market. I mean, you've already seen crude oil go up. That was partly due to the QE3 announcement, but I think a lot of it's got to do with a fear factor going into crude again, with the situation in North Africa and Egypt and Yemen. I mean, these attacks on the U.S. embassies seem to be spreading across the region. Yeah, it's a hard thing for us to sit on this side of the Atlantic and really try to understand that culture, but religion is a very powerful tool. And understand maybe the anger among the young men over the way they've been living in repressive states for all their lives. And if we get into the Israeli-Iranian situation, that's getting pretty iffy as well right now. So if the Straits of Hormuz shut down, then we're really looking at a big,
huge jump in crude costs, gasoline costs, and heating oil costs.
Let's have a look at Valero stock. They're a major refiner, as you know,
Yes.
in the United States. I believe it's VLO on the NYSE. That one's been moving up. Tesoro, Phillips 66, the big refiners. Why are they so popular among investors right now?
Because they can take heavy sour crude, okay? And Valero started that about 5 years ago. They were the first people to actually do it and took everybody by surprise.
Where does that come from, that heavy sour?
Canadian oil sands.
Sure, okay.
Okay. And so those companies you mentioned, Tesoro owns Ultramar, which is a refinery in Montreal. But Valero is based mainly in the Midwest, okay? So, and they can take the discounted Western Canadian Select, which is discounted off of WTI.
So it's got the double discount.
Yeah, right. So their input costs are way down, but the prices, as you know, we just talked about, gasoline prices are way up. So their crack spreads or the refining margins are fabulous.
You know, we've had this debate, this kind of loosey-goosey debate over a national energy policy. And one of the strands there is, why are we not shipping Alberta crude big time into central Canada? Because we're buying this expensive world crude where all the population is. Is that ever going to happen?
Enbridge are the ones who are talking about that, and I think that's probably the way it's going to go. I think that Northern Gateway is a dinosaur right now. It hasn't even been born yet, and it's a dinosaur. The XL is waiting for the whatever president we have in November.
Keystone, yeah.
And that won't be announced till January, and then it takes 2 years to build it. So
2 years, is that the time frame on the
oh yeah,
to get it across Nebraska and all that stuff?
Oh yeah. And then you got in the east, that makes sense, but Enbridge has to reverse some pipelines, and they're thinking along that line. So to bring it in from Edmonton to Sarnia to Montreal to the Irving refinery in St. John.
Would you like to see the government just say, "You're doing this, lads. Central Canada needs this oil"?
That would be. Oh, it's a conservative government, so I don't think you're going to hear those words.
Should they say it though, in the national interest?
I've been getting a lot of questions from Eastern Canada, especially I did an interview this morning out of Halifax, and they're asking the same question. I think it's about time somebody put their foot down. If you can't go west and you're having trouble going south, going over the Arctic is a little bit tough, so what do you got? You got the east.
So we got oil above $100 today, Roger. Where's it going? I mean, obviously, that's an impossible question with the tragic developments in the Middle East, but where do you think it's going for the rest of the year?
Well, any time you introduce the QE, you get it's an inflationary thing that happens because it makes crude more expensive, makes gasoline more expensive. The consumer starts to withdraw due to high energy costs, and you're right back to where you started. But I can't, depending on what happens in the Middle East, you can see it between 105 and 125. Sorry, that's the range I got to go.
Oh, sure, yeah, and I don't think anybody could make a better guess. Roger, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Roger McKnight is Senior Petroleum Analyst at Enpro International.